Welcome back to this week's edition of the Rock and Roll Ghost podcast. This week we have Josh Robbins from the Invincible Czars, a kind of experimental rock metal group who accompany silent films. That's what they're primarily, I guess, known for. How you doing today, Josh? How's touring going?
Touring's been good. Let me put you on my speaker so I can hear you a little bit better here.
Sure.
It's been really fun to be out there. We're kind of riding this wave of the 100th anniversary of this particular movie, Nosferatu. So people have been coming out. We've had big shows, a lot of enthusiasm, and when the crowd's into it, it's a lot more fun.
Yeah. You've done Nosferatu before. You had the album came out in 2015. What got you on the path to? I mean, I know it's one of the biggest silent films ever, so I guess for you guys it would make sense. But What got you on the path to actually accompanying that film?
Well, we'd already been doing several others. We got started. We're from Austin, where the Alamo Drafthouse began. For anybody that doesn't know the Alamo Drafthouse, it was an art house cinema in Austin that, over the last 2 decades has essentially gone corporate, I guess some would say. They've branched out to become a national chain, still based in Austin. But we were accompanying silent movies at that theater back when there were only 1 or 2 in Austin. And, we were kind of part of, like, we were not new. We were not the first ones on the scene with that. We were much later in the trend, if you will. And so we were doing movies that all the other bands in town that had already done Nosferatu and Metropolis and kind of the bigger, better known silent films. So we were doing other movies, lesser known ones. But we started traveling out of town and began to notice that we were traveling out of town more than anybody else from our scene. And enough people between Albuquerque and Mobile, Alabama, and places like that we played, enough people asked us to do Nosferatu that we finally just do it. And that's really the story of it. We just went, all right, let's do it.
You mentioned about Alamo Drafthouse kind of expanding, and I was surprised to see similar locations. I guess Chicago's supposed to get one maybe next year or something. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to finally see it. I've never stepped foot in Texas before, so.
Oh well, it's it's hot.
Well, I know Austin's supposed to be cool, but
Austin's cool.
Yeah,
it's also hot.
Yeah. So you've been on tour for over a month now, right? How's that going?
Yeah, over 6 weeks. We've kind of the fun of it has waxed and waned multiple times, I think. We'll have really fun nights, and then some theaters that we play. Let me take a step back and not say so much theaters, but some towns that we play, we don't know who's going to show up. I mean, sometimes it's really cool, young folks who are into horror and sci-fi and comic books. Kind of more of what I think of as our people. That's who we are.
Yeah.
But then every now and again we do a show like when we played in Cleveland, Ohio. We look out. It's like the youngest person out there is older than any of us. Maybe in their 60s, 70s even. That can be sometimes really cool, and that can be sometimes kind of like it's less like a rock show and more like a college course in film. It becomes a little bit academic at that point. But we just play through those, and you never know who's going to be there. Any given town, any given night. So sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's funny. As we go, we tend to, like anybody else. If you've ever been on a family vacation, I'm sure you've. What I've started to refer to as the memes of the trip, the little jokes that you say constantly over and over that become, the context for all your humor that nobody else knows about. We kind of have wound up incorporating some of that sort of stuff into the show. Just there are funny moments of Nosferatu that we'll call attention to verbally sometimes. we get the audience to howl when it shows the werewolf, and
Yeah, that's cool.
we try to make it a little bit more fun than just sitting there watching an old movie with live music.
Yeah.
So,
I haven't seen the original film in a while, so I gotta look for it, because last year I watched, for the first time since I was a kid, I watched the Bela Lugosi Dracula.
oh yeah, I love that.
That
one.
was neat.
Did a million times.
Yeah, I really love going back to those really classic staples of especially horror films.
Yeah.
There was a film recently. Oh, I'm going to blank on what it was, but there was a film recently which really made me. I can't believe I'm blanking on it, because it actually made an impression on me. But it wasn't a film. No, it wasn't a film. It was the Marvel one-off special that they did about the werewolf.
Oh yeah, I still need to see it. It was good, huh?
It was good. It was very much a throwback to like 30s and 40s era horror, because it was all in black and white.
Awesome.
And lots
Right
of practical effects. And a composer is the one that directed it, Michael Giacchino, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
Oh,
the Batman and a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So it was actually very good. I like this the fact that it was a one-off too.
Yeah, I tend to like those better anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it sounds like it's right up my alley. Thanks for telling me about it. What is it? What is the title of it?
It's something about werewolf. I forgot to tell you. I would have to look it up. Just I think Google search Disney and werewolf, and I'm sure you'll werewolf. Yeah. But it actually is quite good.
Yeah, sounds good.
What was your start in music like? I mean, or an early age, or?
Yeah, well, kind of an early age. I think it seems kind of when I look back, it's kind of inevitable that I got into music for film, because the earliest music that I loved was from what we were just talking about. Movies and TV, Disney movies that I watched on cable back in those days, cable TV, the Disney Channel. This was in the 80s. And, I loved, of course, at the age of 8, 9, I loved Alice in Wonderland and Mary Poppins and Robin Hood. But I also loved all of the Looney Tunes cartoons, Tom and Jerry, Disney cartoons too, and then the cartoons that were on, Transformers, G.I. Joe, all that was on when I was a kid. I loved the music from that. In fact, the moment that I realized I was into heavy metal came when I was 11, when when the Transformers, the movie, came out, that version that came out back in the 80s. I think it was 1986. So about 87. By 1987, I had rented that movie every weekend, and I probably had and watched it at least twice. So I'd probably seen it 100 times by 1987. And I remember that my dad had a pretty cool stereo setup for the 80s. He had all of his stuff wired up so that you could record VHS or audio cassette from either source onto the other. And so I watched Transformers the movie, and anytime there was music, I would rewind it, hit record that part, and then watch through until there was more music, hit record and record that part. And I wound up with this tape of about 35 or 40 minutes of music. I didn't know that you could just go buy the soundtrack. I was 11. And I would play that in a kind of like a Walkman, but it had a single speaker in it rather than a headphone. Okay. I'm sure it had a headphone jack, but I'd put that in my backpack and just blast that heavy metal version of Transformers by Lion on the way to and from school every day on my bike. So that's when I really started to kind of branch off from my parents' music, which was fine. I mean, my dad listened to a lot of ZZ Top and Alice Cooper, Deep Purple, Beatles, Doors. So I had all of that already.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really listening to that soundtrack for Transformers the movie that then, at that point, it was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard.
Right.
That led me to, finding Metallica back when they were doing the whole tape sharing thing. So I really came into music through what we now call classic rock and heavy metal. But then I guess I got a little bit bored of it in the 90s and started coming back to classical music, which my dad had also listened to a lot of. And so all of the film music, I had never lost interest in film music. I loved Danny Elfman. I still love Danny Elfman. But by then I was listening to soundtracks by Bernard Herrmann, like Psycho and North by Northwest, and all of that was mixing in with metal.
Yeah.
And so that's really been my pathway through music there. Eventually I learned to read and write music so that I could communicate with people who play flutes and violins and horns and, non-rock and roll instruments.
Right.
Yeah.
What how did the band get started? How did you guys all come together?
Well, I'm the only person who's been in the band the whole time, and the first lineup of the band didn't last that long. But we just started out as I ran a Craigslist ad. I had, by then, this was around 2001, 2002. By then I was reading and writing music, and I just wanted to find musicians that could also read music and play this, like composed rock music. I didn't know what else to call it back then, that I was writing. And so I would run, not Craigslist. Craigslist didn't exist back then, but I would run actual classified ads in the Austin Chronicle looking for musicians. And I had a few interesting people that answered. Ray Washam answered. He was in a band in Austin called Scratch Acid, but then later he went on to, he was and it was kind of like that for a few years. People would come and go, especially people who played horns and flutes and stuff like that. They were used to actually getting paid for gigs. And, we were just another, band, keeping it weird on Red River Street in Austin, playing at Emos and Room 710 and clubs that aren't even there anymore. We didn't even really fit there. We were just a little too brainy for that scene. So I went through lots and lots of people over the years, and the group kind of settled around 2004 for a while. We had a solid lineup for about 5 or 6 years there. Then as we got more into the silent movies and we were doing more and more composed music and fewer club shows, it got easier and easier to sub people out because, we were starting to actually make a little bit of money, and I could pay people who could read. And they would stick around because I was paying them. So this is all very background stuff, but
that's cool.
Yeah. But Phil, our violinist, the violinist in the band, has been there since about 2004, 2005. So he's been there a while.
Okay.
And we've evolved to a point that we just kind of have a rotating cast of characters, even people from way back when. I call it being in the reserves, the Invincible Czars reserves. So they come back and do shows. They'll do, right now, the drummer on this tour is Louis Landry. He was our drummer from 2010 to 2012. So it's been about 11 years since we played together. But he's back. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I imagine that Austin being a small city, it's easy to keep in touch with everybody too.
Kind of. Yeah, it is. Everybody knows each other, and it can be very incestual. but it's also kind of like LA is for actors. Everybody in town is a musician. Right. And there are so many clubs and so many opportunities to play. It's a really good incubator for creativity. The only thing lacking in Austin is there really isn't any industry there. Not much. I mean, there are a few booking agents, but if you're in country music, there's plenty of music industry in Texas, but not so much otherwise. And so it certainly feels oversaturated there in a town of what's now 1 million people. I'd say about 999,000 of those are musicians that have all decided to move there. And, we're going to make it in Austin. Yeah. I don't know what it is that draws them there. I guess it's cheaper than LA.
I didn't realize Austin had that high of a population. I thought they were a lot smaller.
we're sick of the boom, man. 20 years ago, I think it was under 500,000, and now it's up over 1 million.
Yeah,
because everyone seems to be moving there. I've been calling it America's Party City. You know, there's always a festival going on. ACL, South by Southwest. There's a reggae festival. There's the metal festival in May. I can't remember what it's called now. Every month there's a festival.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what attracts people.
Well, that's cool. Have you played many of these cinemas that you're on tour for before?
Yeah. We've over the years, over the last decade, we kind of built up a circuit of cinemas that we play regularly. We always seem to add some new ones because sometimes the timing doesn't work out. We either have too many shows in a row in a region and can't fit it all in, and so we have to skip one this time or that time. But for the most part, we're playing the same ones. Although I will say that the pandemic shutdown led to a lot of them simply closing up shop. And even the Alamo Draft House had to declare bankruptcy. And you've probably, I mean, if you've been to a movie lately, if anybody's been to a movie lately, you've probably noticed that movie theaters are really suffering because all the studios have moved to, direct to streaming format for a lot of stuff. And a lot of the studios have put all their eggs in the superhero basket. And so if they're doing, horror is always popular, but you don't see a lot of, what am I trying to say here? What you do see a lot of is kind of rehashing the same kind of thing from Hollywood. And so the theaters, they're suffering. The art house cinemas, though, that we tend to play are in a unique position because many of them already have, just out of sheer need for survival, have turned to live events, like hosting bands that aren't don't necessarily have a video component, or just having quote alongs, sing alongs, making events out of showing older movies.
Right.
I think they're in a good position to try to create or host unique content, and I feel like we're kind of simultaneously riding a wave of that, but also sort of helping with it. I mean, many of the theaters we play have said, "Thank you for coming. This is the first sold-out show we've had in a year."
Yeah.
So we tend to play the same ones over and over, and then add more as we go.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sometimes we have to graduate to a bigger space because, if it reaches a point that, oh man, we sold 200 tickets and there were only 100 seats, well, maybe we need to find a bigger place next year in this town. That's happened a few times too. So
that's cool. That's very cool. Have you got a show, because I'm from Chicago, you got a show on the 24th this month at Music Box Theater. Have you played there before?
We have never played there, and we're really excited to finally play there. I've been trying to get them to host us for about 5 or 6 years. And the Music Box is one of the biggest and most successful and prestigious of the art house cinemas in the nation. And so they can afford to be picky. And we're really very excited that they finally decided to host us. I'm super stoked about that one. That's like the highlight of the whole tour for me. So
it's a. Have you ever been there? Like in any way?
I've never been there. I mean, I've seen the pictures of the inside, some video. Never.
No, it's a very classic movie theater. I mean, I've been going there since I was in high school, and that was a long time ago.
I guess we're probably I graduated 94. When did you graduate?
89.
80. Oh, so you're even older than me.
Yeah.
Not much older.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I wrote about that film for my high school newspaper.
Oh my gosh. And it was a new movie then.
Yeah. So that was like, that was one I always felt like you couldn't write about a film like that in the school newspaper now. They would not.
Oh, no, I doubt it. I'm surprised you were able to back then.
I have no idea how, but I know I've got it somewhere, like in storage. It was a very proud moment. Let me just say that.
I bet, man. Yeah, your foray into first forays into journalism, I imagine.
Yeah. So what else is coming up next for you guys? Do you have something on the horizon?
Yeah, well, we're always doing the silent movie thing, but of course that's not the only thing that we do. It's just the most popular thing we do. So next year we're going to bring back the soundtrack we did for The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not, but it's on my list of like movies to see.
It's really worth seeing. It's considered the world's first feature-length horror film.
Yeah.
And it's the same director as Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau, German. And unlike Nosferatu, it is complete. What I mean is that Nosferatu suffers from lost footage because maybe you already know this, but Nosferatu, the filmmakers were sued by Bram Stoker's wife, his widow, because it's essentially just the Dracula story. And most of the copies were destroyed back in the 20s. But of the ones that have survived, they've been pieced together over the years to create the most complete restoration that we have now. But even that is not totally complete. So the movie suffers a little bit from a few parts where you're kind of watching it, maybe like, did we miss something or skip ahead here? So there are a couple moments like that in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
But Caligari is really not that way. It's totally intact. It makes sense. It's kind of like a long episode of The Twilight Zone.
Okay.
And it's all about dreams and sleeping and murder.
Yeah.
So I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, for Nosferatu, the music itself, are you doing the music from original compositions?
Well, of our original compositions, yes. The score that was created by Hans Ehrman back in 20 are versions out there that you can buy, like the Kino Lorber DVD. If you buy that, they have attempted to reconstruct it from what's been found, and then bits of other classical music that maybe you've heard or maybe you haven't heard. But no, our score, our soundtrack is ours. The first draft, as you pointed out at the beginning, was recorded back in 2015. And then during the shutdown, we built up our touring circuit so much that people were asking, when are you going to release a DVD? So we finally recorded the version, like an updated version of the soundtrack, and set it to DVD. And that's the version that we play now. So,
okay. Very cool.
All very original. Cool.
Well, I'm really looking forward. Hopefully I can try to sneak away. I live in the far south suburbs of Chicago. So
all right.
I can get up to Chicago maybe to see the show.
Yeah, if you do, let me know, man. We'll put you on our comp list.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. Yeah. I'll let you know. But if you're interested in checking it out, there's a number of shows still to come. So go, check out the Invincible Czars online. They got their tour dates on their website, and with this story, the interview, I'll post those links too, and some other stuff. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I hope the tour continues to go well, and I wish you good luck.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time, man. Great to talk to you and meet you virtually, at least.
Yeah. I appreciate you taking the time.
In person. Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have a good rest of your day. Okay.
All right. You too, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you. Bye.